I'm doing that just to shock and scare him half to death. He'll be on the money there going, what's happening? What's happening? But no, that's just me. You know what it's like. John loves to come dancing on, so he'll have pulled a muscle now. Hello, everybody. Yes, I feel like Michael Herbert. You know, have I been off this stream? Have I slept? Does it look like it? Good to see you all again at our 5:45 slot, where we have our fun, frank, and fulsome review of the 5th episode of season 2 of Ncuti, the story and the engine. By now, after all these episodes, John Pertwee, Patrick Troughton, William Hartnell, Tom Baker, Peter Davison, etc., were all very well established as doctors. Would you say the same about the Ncuti Gatwa doctor after this amount of episodes? Now, we are the Sense Sphere, talking sense, making sense of all the nonsense, flying around our favourite show. So you're in the right place. If you want detail, debate, passion and fun, then you've found your home. Click on those notifications, give us a like and subscription, and I will be a very happy little Whovian. So, as you know, earlier today, we got the ratings overnight. I did a little stream, you know, as you do. I mean, basically, let's face it, they've added 90,000. I mean, whoa, get the balloons out, you know? And as I said earlier, that fills a Wembley Stadium. So in a country of about 76 million, we've added a Wembley Stadium's worth of viewers. And if you think that the week before, when we got the lowest ratings ever, there was actually an FA Cup semi-final, there's your 90,000 straight away. They've just got home. That's it, really. So there you go. In essence, what we have got here is there's the 5 episodes. We go up, we go down, we go around, but actually they don't go back to 2 million, do they? The 2 million, which was seen as a real terrible, terrible overnight for Legend of the Sea Devils, is now looking like something almost unattainable. So we've got a lot to talk about tonight on whether we got our predictions right or not. Now, the Hoopettes, they will be on, and the Hoopettes, this is the episode they would like to have seen, the Runaway Bride with Miss Piggy. And I think that would have been a much better version than the version they saw, because they do like to see puppets in action. So there you go. Maybe Pigs in Space, remember that? So we had an episode written by Inaya Ellams. Now, I, as you know, taught English for many, many years, and he was never on our register. He was never on our curriculum. So established playwright, apparently, and poet. Never crossed my door. We did a lot of cross-cultural stuff. And of course, the issue is we found out that RTD had picked him, had selected him. And that's because he saw him at the National Theatre with the Barbershop Chronicles and asked for him to do a version of that with Doctor Who. That'll be a big subject for us to discuss tonight. Did that work? Doctor Who in a barbershop? I'm not quite sure it did land at all. Look at these designs for what they were going to do with Loki and Anansi. You know what we got when you saw it. This is the version that we could have got. And you see the artist's impressions and you think, God, that would have been interesting with how they would have done that. Look at how the barber could have been. I just find it fascinating how this all could have played out. Of course, Lucky Day had they released their kind of artist impressions of how they did it. That looked a more accurate representation of what they finally did. And I was impressed with that, I have to say. But I would still prefer something like, yeah, I would. Whether it's a trunk call or not, I really would prefer that creature in the pit anytime. It was vivid. It was tangible. It was a threat. There was a lot of jeopardy. It might have been an awful lot of plastic or whatever that stuff was, and it might have had a strange protuberance, but actually had more threat compared to all the stuff that we get nowadays. Did you notice in our VE Day commemorations that Verada Sethu did actually have a role in it? And it was when she was reading out some letters from the Second World War. This is when we hit the DEI element that obviously is something that might be discussed tonight regarding this episode, which is is it right that you can represent historically inaccurately a time for Britain, but when you do Nigeria or another country, you have to be authentic? Is that fair? Is that what's going on here? Is that why some people are a little bit troubled? Is that why possibly, and I've got the 5-minute breakdowns, not quite 5-minute, 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 but I do have some of the breakdowns to the ratings, so stay around for that, because my dad kicked off about this. He really did, and he's not the type to kick off. So yes, DEI might crop up on our chats tonight. Well, I'll cheer you up for a second. Did you see this merchandise is out and about? The Curse of Peladon and Planet of the Daleks on vinyl or CD. I dare say vinyl now is the popular one, but there you go. I'm not too hot about the front cover, but if you want, because you know he's going down very well, Jon Pertwee, at the moment with this season 7. If you really fancy going back to some proper Doctor Who, there it is. Are you one of those who does get the vinyl? I've got the money, but I'm not going to do it. No way at the moment. They get too much from us. So let's kind of move on to talking to my crew. And we're going to get reviewing the story in the engine now. Now, you know they like to come on and have a little dance. And I feel sometimes like Jimmy Tarbuck, and it's Sunday night at the Palladium. But anyway, I think this is what we're going to do. We're going to get them coming on. So I wonder if he's charged up. Have you warmed up? Have you got your Synatogen tablets ready? Have you warmed up your calves, John? Here we go. Let's get him on and the crew. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. What's he doing with that, darling? Oh, we've got you back.
Dancing.
Twerking. Here's Rachel. And we've saved our best dancers for last. We love the dance. Right,
It's
okay,
water.
that's that done. Yeah, right. It's Paul. He saves himself for the next bit, and I know he's got a lot to say. Oh, here we go. Look, this is the issue. We can't get going. Hugh, they're still around. They haven't gone anywhere. Hello. Oh, hold on.
What's happening?
This is our Ncuti Gatwa doctor, and he's shy. Oh, what is it? What is it?
Shy.
Yeah. Oh, it's because he doesn't feel safe here.
Oh, right.
All right. Well, where do you feel safe then? What's your issue? A barber's shop in Lagos. Is he for real? You feel safer there? I tell you what, maybe he's right. Clear off, you.
Get on.
Oh, God.
Shamaini, everybody!
Oh, it's Neris here.
I'm here!
Oh, no. Oh.
What is it, Belinda?
I feel the same, Mr. Brendan.
Oh.
You feel what? You don't feel safe in Britain either.
No, I think I need to go back to India.
I think you better before you're taken away. You clear off as well. They're cheeky beggars. Honestly, this is the essence of the show now. They don't feel safe here. Well, bye-bye. Get on the plane.
I've never felt safe anywhere here. Never felt safe.
No, you never do. Always
Well,
full of
maybe to
moans and groans. Right. Well, you know our first item, Hugh. It's not changed. I'm very predictable, you know, Hugh. We're going to start with our burning issues. Are you ready? Oh boy, are there some burning issues? And I know it's been a hot day, but yes. John, welcome. I'm not going to be that polite anymore and that formal anymore. But anyway,
You're welcome. And what am I welcome to exactly?
this episode, I think. Right. Okay, then. One of your burning issues, then.
Right. Okay. Now, probably I'm going to set as a bit of an outline on this burning issue, because this has been a build-up over a number of episodes in this series. It's to do with the static nature of this current iteration of Doctor Who. It was particularly bad in this episode, perhaps for understandable reasons. This was written by someone perhaps more used to producing stage plays in his television productions. Fair enough. But nonetheless, for the best part of 45 minutes, in a program with $1 million zillion budget, we get 4, 5, 6 men and women, and then another woman in a room, talking at each other, then shouting at each other, and then a few bangs and flashes, and nothing other than that. And I just wonder, for the sake of the next generation of Who fans for Doctor Who to have any sort of traction and build-up, how in any which way, forget the merits or demerits of the story, but just how this is being framed and sold, in what way is this appealing to children? Because back in the day, Doctor Who might have had 4 walls and a few sets, but they were endlessly building corridors for people to run up and down. Even though while we were having plot exposition, we were doing it while Pertwee and Joe or Sarah and the Doctor ran down a corridor chased by whatever the monster of the week was. And it kept me, as a child then, and future children, gripped. I don't know who this was for, Brendan.
Yeah, I think they're missing me. It's going over my head. And now, Hugh, welcome back to obviously the Sensory Reviews. You were doing our season 1 ones, but was this your first revisitation of season 2 episodes?
Yes. So, having been broken by season 1, I haven't watched any of it until last night. I thought about trying to catch up, but I also thought that might bias me. So, but this was my first one of series 2.
Aren't you lucky? And lucky and unlucky all at the same time.
So as your entry point to season 2, remember when we were Doctor Who fans as kids and we said, what was your first episode? And now this is your introduction to Ncuti in season 2. And you heard John there saying how static and still it was. What were your thoughts on it?
I mean, my burning issue in terms of this is why are we going back to having more and more gods? Whenever you'd classic Who, you would have gods. I might have to restrain myself about the Great Show in the Galaxy, but they were gods, inverted commas, gods. They weren't real. They were perceived as gods. Now, apparently, we've got Ncuti getting drunk with Dionysus. We are watching Marvel. It's just a nonsense. It's not as... I don't expect Doctor Who to be a hard science fiction program. I expect it to be a science fiction program. This isn't.
Talk about great expectations, Hugh. And I thought I teed up ready for your first mention of Kinder.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, obviously we reviewed Kinder, and there are aspects of it in terms of this which I think chime. So obviously there is a god in it. Obviously there is use of stories in it. There's use of indigenous people's idea of stories in terms of Aborigines. There is much more depth in terms of the investigation of colonialism in that than there is here. This is, I mean, the shocking thing, as John was saying about having the people in the room, is that for the 3 blokes who were, for some unknown reason, captured in order to tell their stories, all the stories were told in 2 minutes and then they had nothing after that. It's just a shocking waste of time if you're going to introduce people and then not do anything with them. But stop with the gods. You can't do this. Doctor Who has to be effectively in form of agnostic at worst. You can't be a believer in gods because it runs into a whole problem. And too much of this has happened over the years.
So there you go. We've got two grumpy Glaswegians back.
Oi. Listen,
I was saving you from the other
yeah.
label you've accumulated. But yeah, we've heard from over the border where you can see where Ncuti ran from. He was asylum seeking from them. So that's why he went to London. So basically, we've heard obviously it's too static. We've heard from Hugh that he's godless. And Rachel, over to you. What's your burning issue?
Well, I had a few, but I think I'll stick to the biggest one that I had, which you saw in my notes because you have seen my notes.
Yes.
It's the stick to your own race element.
Ugh.
Yeah. So the Doctor theoretically has never stuck to his own race. He is a Time Lord and he decided to leave Gallifrey. So other than returning home briefly, he never has stuck to his own race. So suddenly we've got this sticking to your own race element as if to suggest that vitriol in 2019 is just as bad as vitriol back when it was segregated. And that's just, I was just like, why do we need to go there? That little bit of time that they spent dedicating to that could have been dedicated to the plots and moving the story along. And the other thing that I would have had about this is also, if the Doctor is gay, why is he going to Nigeria?
Well, you know that I got a little bit troubled by this, as you know, last night. I was really, if I get the right one, I've got so many things going on here. Press the right buttons, Brendan. I was so triggered by this. So let me just kind of set it up. Yes, I'm not going to repeat them all again. I've got a bit of the transcript here, Rachel, but yes, he explained. It took him a while to explain, but you could see from the smile on his face when he landed in Lagos, and she could tell Belinda that, go on then, be a free spirit, enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
There's no rush suddenly. She whinges about her parents every week, and suddenly she's going, go and fly, young bird, and all the rest.
Yeah.
And that phrase, treat you like one of your own.
Yeah.
Was blown in, and as we both said, and I just will remind people, I did it on the Who Night last night. Look at the stats there. Basically, in the public opinion poll on same-sex marriage in Nigeria only 2 years ago, 92% strongly oppose it. There's a whole list of activities that cannot be done in Nigeria unless you want a 14-year prison sentence, and that's just starters for 10. In northern Nigeria, there still has Sharia law and you could be stoned. So basically, not very authentic, Rachel.
No, and I didn't think that. And to be honest with you, I just really wanted to get on with the storytelling. I was quite excited that it was going to be set in Lagos, Nigeria, and I wanted to see more of it. But, well, we'll get to that bit later. But
I got the impression we were in the British executives version of Nigeria.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to think it was filmed there, but it wasn't, was it?
No, it was in a car park. It was a bit like Carry On Abroad when they did it in Pinewood's car park. That's basically what they did.
Yeah.
Now, just before I come to Paul, obviously we our puppets are working very hard, manning the phones. It's a bit like Noel Edmonds' multicolored swap shop, and let's have a. So yes, they've been working hard, and we've just had a super chat. I can't believe it. We've just had a super chat. So hold on, let me just the Who Pets.
30 pence.
Yes, because they're in a Brisbane sweatshop. They can't cope. So here we go. Oh, bless. And we've got different segments ready for those who are being generous later on. They won't be the same ones. So thank you, Sean. He's one of my children of time. I'll have him in the creche on Tuesday night. Did anyone else think it was just boring? Yes. Jamie went mad about it being boring.
See, I don't think it was boring, but that could also be the actress in me, like looking at contextual stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
This is where I fall into what John was saying about it being very still, and you know, talky. You go to the theatre and you might get a heavy, wordy script. Of course you do. And they might just have one or two scenes, and the seeds of everything are just in the dialogue. And you go, oh, and all that stuff.
Yeah,
And it
you
felt
have
a
to
bit
really
like
pull
that.
it out, don't you?
Yeah. Now, Paul, have you recovered? I'm sure you're excited about this episode. I bet, you know, what's your burning issue?
My biggest burning issue is the ethnic cleansing of a white caste from what is a long-standing British institution and the undiluted, unapologetic racism that entails. That's my biggest burning issue. It's unforgivable.
Is that all? No.
Well,
I know. Go on. You elaborate a little bit more for us, and I'll set up.
well, this has been coming for a while. This has been coming for a long while. I saw an interview, actually, quite by chance, from the Radio Times YouTube channel, and it involved Farada Sethu and Ncuti Gatwa, and they were asked by the interviewer how it felt being the two leads and both being people of colour. And after much incoherent babbling, it gave rise to the idea that it was progress. They felt that it was progress, that it had been a long time coming. And that's the ethos with which this new era of Russell T Davies II is being showcased, because it's supposed minorities who he deems to be beleaguered, and he feels the need to champion them. And this is one such case. There are other cases, as we all know, but this is the current case. This episode deals with that current case.
Yeah. I mean, Hugh, what do you think? I asked on the Who Night last night. I said, is this a worthy experiment to do? Because it seemed to be obviously a deliberate ploy to say, let's have a whole cast and a lot of crew who are people of colour to show we can do it. The trouble is, by doing that, I don't know, was it worth it, and did it have impact, and did it work?
So I think there might be an episode where it would be worth it, because obviously there's no reason why the Doctor shouldn't go to Nigeria or anywhere else on the world, and I think that's fair enough, and therefore you try and have something authentic. This didn't feel much more than a box ticking exercise. I really liked the look of it. I actually quite enjoyed the fact that it looked like a theatre show and a bottle episode and things like that. And it was done prettily, the drawings and stuff I liked. But it is very static. The problem, I think, with it being boring is that there is, as you've discussed many times before in this, Brendan, a lack of jeopardy. And last night there might have been jeopardy, but it made no sense. So how do you kill gods? What difference would it have made? Really? Aren't they all dead anyway? Does Dionysus exist? It reminded me to an extent of what you might see in Supernatural, rather than Doctor Who in terms of this. It could have been interesting. It wasn't.
Yeah. Now, John, obviously, when you said it was very static and all the rest of it, and in that way theatrical, and some people have called it boring. To me, there were only two tiny moments, like Hugh said, of jeopardy. One was you're strapped in by some sort of current in the chair. Whoa, that's shocking. That's it. And then when he opened the door to the vortex, to me, they were the only moments. Or unless you get excited, John, by a green or a red light.
Yeah, and even that looked a bit cheap and old school, to be certainly, although old school would have done it better. There was just nothing. Hugh mentions that he liked the idea of it being a bottle episode and akin to a stage play. That's fine. And we go back, and it's the one we all return to is Midnight, which is done, in a confined space and done a whole lot better. So let's mention that and then park it. But this feels way more like a stage production than Midnight Fit. And Midnight felt more like a television production done in one room. The direction, the intercutting, the dialogue, fast paced, just kept things moving. This was just a collection of people talking to each other and moving in with the confines of one set, and there was no real conflict to maintain your interest. There was one bit of conflicted conflict between the doctor and the barber later on, which really didn't go anywhere. And as I say, it was conflicted because it turned out it wasn't really the barber's fault that we do all this. Yeah. What I would say is that, to go back to the original burning issue, we've got to remember, what is this for? Who is this for? It's chiefly for family viewing, kids with their parents, and us who are forever kids sitting down to watch this. This is just plain good old-fashioned boring.
Boring. And I also know the other thing, I had to spend so much extra time yesterday, I don't know about Rachel, to try and make sense of it, because it was laden with dialogue rather than any action that spoke with the volumes instead. You had to sit there going, so how did that resolution work? How did he collect that? How did he do this? And all I got it down to in the end was some version of supernatural Tommy rot, really.
It wasn't worth your second or third viewing. I watched this once and once alone. I wouldn't have merit. It doesn't merit a second viewing. I thought I would watch it again purely for the purposes of this review, to make sure that if there was anything I really needed to see or had missed, in case. But that puts the fault on me, as if I'm missing nuances, if I'm missing something, and not the program. This is the program's fault, because the 1.59 million people who watch this, 95+% of them will never watch this again, and they've walked away with the same impression I have had. It's boring, muddled nonsense.
Well, it was interesting when you mentioned to me about George and said his reaction, because my dad texted me last night, and his dad's calm, but he defends the Geordie era the lot.
Yeah.
He was furious with last night, and you equally saw a reaction like that in your house.
Do you want to bring it up? I'm aware you want to bring in others too, Brendan, but I'll bring it up briefly. Myself, my husband George, a good friend of Hugh's too, know that we watched Doctor Who together and have done for many years, certainly since the show's return. In fact, I showed him all of Classic Who when we first met. Yeah, I made him a fan even if he wasn't. Last night was the first time, after 10 minutes, he got up and walked out of the room. He couldn't take it anymore. And it was shortly after that initial TARDIS scene when the Doctor makes reference to the fact how much more comfortable he feels in Lagos, Nigeria than he does anywhere else. That was enough for him to just get up and march out. Now, me being the true professional that I am, Brendan, knowing that I'd have to review this for you, I sat there and endured the rest of it. But if George is doing that, and he's been open, you say, throughout most of this era so far, all of the Geordie era has stuck with it. And last night was a deal breaker for him. For how many other people was it the same thing, I wonder?
Yeah, shouting at us and everything. And then, Rachel, I found that what they do, and John brought this up in one of his burning issues, but I'll be intrigued about what you think, is that when you do a controversial episode like Rogue, you bathe it in classic Doctors. You bathe it in loads of great shots and stuff, and Easter eggs, and then none of us can unpick it. That's what it seems to me.
Yeah, and they're doing it on purpose. We know this is going to cause perhaps some issues with the classic fans like us. So therefore, we're going to put in what they are attached to so that they can see it. But they also put in Jodie as well. So they're aware that this might be starting to irritate people who were switched on throughout all of Jodie, maybe even like your dad was. You know, you say your dad like Jodie's era and whatnot. Yeah. So they are aware that they're causing issues. So, and they don't like focusing on the past, but when they really need to tie it in, they will tie it in. They underused him in this story.
It's a bit like Melee, you know. It's almost a bit sinister, you know, trying to entice you in by offering you sweeties.
Yeah, I find I think it's sinister because what they're doing is like Rogue. They did it last year, you know. Rogue, very, very canon-breaking story, as we know. And they had the Schalke Doctor thrown in and the Fugitive Doctor thrown in, and it was all there. And as you know, if you try and unpick these things, it's very hard to do because Sorry, John, I know you want to come in, but you know the brain of Morbius. People have overused that as an excuse to do stuff, haven't they? You know, that's all.
But, and the reason why, Brendan, we know this has been done quite deliberately to entice us older fans and our people are getting a bit peed off with what's going on here is that, remember, this is season 2 of Doctor Who. Season 2, not season 15 of New Who or season 40, whatever, of old Who, of constant Who, consistent Who. They are after a new audience. We knew they were. So why are they referring back, first of all, to old Doctors, the first 12 and 13, but in addition, making a cameo of a fugitive Doctor who isn't even properly part of the list, and from a season which failed, which nobody ever really rates, and yet they still go on. How are you, if you are a new Disney viewer in the States or across the world, or if you are a new viewer in the United Kingdom, what did you make of that scene? And the only reason it's there is to wheel those people in again, to make sure, don't worry guys, you're watching this good old Doctor Who, either 13 style or previous style. It's
Yeah,
nonsense.
I mean, Paul, I saw you see on Twitter, Paul, the people, some people get excited going, oh, did you see Jodie? It's when she was having the ice cream on top of the TARDIS with Yaz. Oh, it's those two again, and you get all the purple hearts and all this stuff, and you think, oh, grow up. Are you really impressed by the episode because you saw somebody for 2 seconds? Really? Is this how superficial society is now, or viewing is now? And maybe RTD's onto something. But when you saw all these classic actors in your favorite show, Paul, did you feel like me that they were trying to do a mischievous trick?
No, it just highlighted the inadequacy of this writer. He's not fit to write for television, let alone a specific show like Doctor Who. He didn't grasp anything that was important about writing for television, and by extension, of course, anything that's important for Doctor Who. Not at all. I know this is a different section that I'm alluding to now, but not at any point, because of his inadequacy, did I recognize this as Doctor Who. So it was impossible to sort of care when he introduced elements that I know to be from a time when the show was successful and veritable.
Yeah. And what's Sylvester McCoy done? He wasn't in it.
Yeah, he wasn't in it. Where did he go? They still underused Colin Baker in that scene.
I think he was looking for his spoons.
Yes, ready for Bang Bang a Boom next week.
Yeah. Unless they're saving him, because I think we're going to get a lot of stuff coming back soon.
He had a ferret in his trousers and he was wriggling about too much.
So we've touched on a few little issues, but one of the other ones was when he said this was the first time he's been in a black body, and of course a lot of people were going, what? Hold on, I thought you did a fugitive Doctor.
And that would have been just about acceptable, because they're ignoring her. But then he says that in an episode where they have her in it.
That when he said that, right, I first went, what? Hang on, no. And then I brushed it off. I was just like, okay, whatever. And then they introduced her, and I was like, oh my God, they really put their foot in it, didn't they? Doing that, yeah. That was a bit of a mistake, a gaping mistake, because isn't it at this point that Jodie's Doctor has met the fugitive Doctor, but does not retain the memories of the fugitive Doctor, right? So he would know by this point.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Although we've maintained our memory of that era, sadly.
It's not just that he would know. I mean, the problem with the cameo with Joe Martin appearing is that that's not her. That's his memory of her talking to the character, and that then makes no sense, because he definitely knows because of that.
I got that wrong then. Maybe I'm wrong then, Hugh. I thought it was her memory of meeting the Doctor, and that's what the Doctor looked like when.
Yes, but he's speaking in it, or the Doctor is speaking.
Yeah.
So the Doctor has to know that that's it, and maybe she is looking at it. But that's why it's an utter mess.
Totally.
Yeah. No War Doctor. We didn't get that either. I mean, it's funny what you have. And I, as you know, some of you will have seen last night, said, listen, is there an issue going on here, which is they've sneaked it in just for the sake of plot, but actually it's quite sinister what's going on here. The Doctor, our 15th Doctor, basically seems to be saying he's not feeling safe in various situations or doesn't feel accepted. So he feels safe when he goes to Lagos in a barber shop. Nothing about women in Nigeria, just men. And so I find that rich with the progressives at the moment when we talk about female spaces and male spaces. It's a male space we're going to focus on this week, folks.
Yeah, funny that, isn't it? Because Brendan, you imagine if the Doctor walked down that market with Rogue hand in hand, would he have felt safe? If a trans woman walked down that market,
Oof.
would they feel safe? I'm not getting what message they're trying to send us here because it's all a muddle. Absolutely, I'm not sure they know.
I didn't know. I mean, I'll ask the full panel here. This is a bit I didn't understand. I was thinking, look, I'm trying not to be baited or triggered by some of this nonsense, but you're not making any sense. You're saying, oh, having a black skin, I don't feel accepted in here. I feel better when I'm surrounded by my own. That was what they were saying. And then Belinda reinforced that by saying her grand takes her to India, and then she feels as though she's surrounded by her own, and I assume feels better. And then I thought, I know, but if the Patrick Troughton Doctor was in that marketplace, he would have felt out of kilter and probably not accepted and at home either. What's your bloody point?
And if you're going to be with your own, shouldn't you be in Gallifrey?
Yeah,
Yes.
you should be in your own place.
Where there are now Black Time Lords, so what's the issue? That's your place, isn't it?
If the Doctor is a Gallifreyan, isn't he guilty, therefore, of cultural appropriation by taking on the culture and absorbing it and going to? Is he not as guilty as those who push this stuff of accusing the rest of us?
Well, especially when Rachel, that bit of dialogue when he does I don't know, I can't do it. I'm not going to try and do it. He does the very black Creole and the not in, and he.
The not.
Why does it suddenly do that? I know. I see Obama do it sometimes. Arms are hanging, and he does all this stuff, and you're going, "Oh, what the hell? What the hell? You're an educated bloke. Suddenly, you're now pretending you're down with the kids." No, you're not.
One of my critiques in this for Ncuti was the fact that he just kept flipping between accents. And it's like, please, can you just choose one and just stick to it? Because you start losing the gravitas of your performance if you keep flipping between accents, and it can create problems. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, well, he's playing at it. This is my problem.
Well, he's not authentic. That's the thing. That's what comes across. There's no authenticity.
He can do in English. We know he can do Scottish because he lived there for a long time. He does Emily, and then he slips into whatever he slipped into in this one.
Now, Paul,
just choose one.
Now, Paul, you mentioned this as your burning issue, and you've mentioned it at the beginning better than me. But there's Lagos. They want it to look authentic. That's the shot. It's actually a proper shot from Lagos. Fair enough. That's Lagos, right? Yep, that's it. And then you go to 1814 Thin Ice with the Capaldi era, and I only had to find seconds of clips. And you just go, why is it that our history has to be so represented when you want an authentic version of Nigeria? Because this is almost laughable. Why? That's London in 1814, apparently.
It's just revisionism that stems from a need to champion the cause of coloured people. And this has been happening in this country's television a long time, and advertisements generally a long time before this current series of this current misbegotten era. And the dialogue that Gatwa used about not feeling safe was simply a pretext to introduce the two leads of colour into a scenario populated by black people so that they could get the full sweep and make some sort of woefully judged point and just create divisiveness. I mean, the real irony here for me is it goes against their own stupid edict, doesn't it? This DEI that they feel they must adhere to. What it is really is just a means of visiting some kind of retribution for supposed wrongs, and virtue signalers like Davies, and I suspect a large proportion of the production team, will exalt in this, won't they? It's the worst possible thing.
Sorry, Rachel, you made a point last night
okay.
in the thread about this on the DEI front, because with the acting, the formula they're using that, because I didn't understand. It looked to me on Unleashed that if not all, nearly all the 80 supporting artists were people of colour, of course.
Yeah.
It was representing authentic, and they had a Nigerian advisor because
Yeah.
they wanted to get it authentic.
From South Wales.
So where was the history advisor on Victorian England here? Because they're ballsed up big time. Why is it? Rachel, can you see what's going on here? As in, I don't know why. One minute you have to be authentic, and the next minute deliberately not.
Yeah, it's called colourblind casting. I'm surprised that, they've got plenty of BBC historians at their disposal. I don't know why they could just speak to one of them, like Lucy Worsley would be a good one, for example. But yeah, it's just because they need to be seen to be diverse, and they believe that this is progressive. But in many respects, when you do it like this, it quite often can be regressive, because it can be seen as a form of indirect racism, I guess you could say. And it's not a good look. Yeah, I know a lot of people would like to see themselves in this role. I mean, I guess this is fiction, so people would say it's just entertainment, so it's not as bad. But I do take issue with it, because when you're not allowed to swap someone like, say, Martin Luther King, but you could swap, say, Isaac Newton, then I have an issue.
Yeah, because Hugh, I don't go flying into all this race baiting nonsense, but I am getting a bit perturbed about the messaging and the subtle messaging going on here. It does seem, because this feeds into a bigger debate, that you are manufacturing a representation of one society, but the other one you're doing an idealized version. And if you're going to mess with one to be more positive and mess with another one to be extremely, shaming and angry about our past, it's going to be seen as unfair.
Yeah, I mean, to pick up on Rachel's point about colourblind casting, one of the ones that I think is very good on colourblind casting is the David Copperfield, with Dev Patel as David Copperfield, because it doesn't really matter, because that is properly fiction. It's not trying to be a representation of Victorian London. It's trying to be an entertainment, and that's fair enough. It's not saying anything other than we're going to have a cast of the best actors for the role, and that happens to be it. There always has been a problem in terms of making representation work, because if you did do it seriously, obviously it's very difficult to have any black characters in Shakespearean history plays other than having Othello in the tragedy. So there is a question of representation which I think gets addressed, and that's been reasonable. I think the problem with this is, as you say, Brendan, that the whole aspect of this is to make Lagos seemingly a much more welcoming place for gay Rwandan Scottish person from Gallifrey. None of that makes sense. So if you're going to do this, it all has to be based around what you're trying to say. And I think, as a lot of people said, I don't think they're clear about that. I think this is... there's a lot of tick boxes.
I mean, John, we started in the 60s with Doctor Who, education, historicals, all of that, and I know they tried their best with John Lucarotti and everybody to try and, for their time, be as historically accurate as they could. But I find now we're just doing idealized versions of stuff, and therefore it's poisoning the Doctor Who program, because when you get to the point of, okay, we can see the sledgehammer messaging, it's idealized, and then on top of that, it's not much of a story. You think, my God, this is poor, gruel.
Yeah, I would agree with what Hugh just said. There's very much better ways, and has been better ways of doing this. For example, in Shakespeare, I've seen people of colour play roles that Shakespeare would have written for white people, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't. it doesn't take you out of the drama. This sort of stuff does. When viewers like us and ordinary viewers who aren't as obsessed with Doctor Who as we are, would sit there and say, hold on a minute, this doesn't look right to me. And it takes them out of the drama. The ticking of that box therefore becomes a barrier to the entertainment or that you're trying to create for people to enjoy. What I think, I read an article some time back where they refer to this stuff as hyper-liberal overreach, where in order to, what they see, the progressive left see to fully compensate for everything we white people in the West have done, that we have to overcompensate. So that's why you end up in a situation where you can have 1814 London being pursued with a multi-ethnic cast, but Lagos, Nigeria must be, as they see it, a totally black cast in order to fully represent what they see as an idealized version. Neither are true, and neither end up satisfying the viewer and just take you out of the drama, which means they've failed.
I mean, so, and then on top of that, as we said, they got the Fugitive Doctor stuff wrong. I'm not quite sure why they bothered putting her in. RTD said he wanted her in because it was such a diverse cast that he wanted her in. It seemed right. And then you go, not necessarily, mate. So there was no artistic reason, no narrative reason, but it just was the right look. And of course, there's your answer. It's whether it looks good. And so that's a shame. So she's being used by a white Swansea lad called RTD. Unfortunate. This really got me going, and I made a big play last night. I'll just be brief today. I used to call it the World Wide Web until the humans named something far uglier after that. And I remember the London 2012 opening ceremony to Tim Berners-Lee was celebrated. You saw him there. He was hidden in that house. He typed that message to the world. This is for everyone. The World Wide Web. I remember being a teacher when they introduced it to us and we had to learn what the hell it was. And let's be honest, if people have misused it, that doesn't mean it's a bad product. It means, you know.
Sorry for cutting in here, Brendan. I agree exactly with that as well. That was, to me, that's Russell Davies speaking, not the writer, because Russell Davies doesn't like the internet when it speaks against him, as a lot of it is at the moment for what he's doing with Doctor Who. But back in the day, we would have written that in fanzines and pamphlets and things. So would he then have said that the invention of the printing press and the photocopier were also bad things? It's a nonsense. It's just a stupid thing to say. Yeah, there are bad people who use the internet to say bad things and evil things, but that doesn't make the invention itself a bad thing. It's a liberating thing. It has brought people together, and it should be celebrated, as indeed you said at the London 2012. It was celebrated, but this is the showrunner editorializing, quite obviously.
I mean, Paul, has he not seen Mark of the Rani with the Luddites? I mean, come on.
That's it, isn't it? There's no consistency because he doesn't need there to be. If he decides that the World Wide Web is evil, despite the BBC having some 13 years showcased it as a thing of virtue, then he'll do that. That's what he is. That's what he's about. Hypocrisy, and on an entirely unashamed basis. And it means that he can daub whatever excess he feels like over our show. And that's precisely what this episode is.
How progressive that one of the greatest tools to educate our young is being seen as something that's ugly. Unbelievable. He obviously clearly never got anywhere near teaching and hasn't been a parent. He hasn't got a blooming clue. The children, it's amazing what a tool it is for kids.
So the problem with this is that, as with so much of society, and to an extent what happens on the internet itself, is that we've ripped the word nuance out of the dictionary. And there's no nuance in what was being said last night. There's no examination of the good and the bad, because apart from anything else, if you're looking for stories, okay, the internet may have an obsession with stories about sex, but it has a hell of a lot of stories from people that would not have had access to do that before. Similarly, as John was mentioning about the printing press, I mean, the struggles of communication are about having difficulty in containing freedom, because that's a good thing overall. But there's no examination of that. It's just a throwaway line again. As Paul's saying about editorializing, it's Russell inserting a line to go, their Yabu sucks.
And it just shows how illiberal these so-called liberals are. They don't like to hear anything to the contrary. So because they are hearing that, and I have no doubt that Russell Davis pays attention to some Doctor Who streams, maybe even this one, who knows? But when he does hear something which he doesn't like, he goes off in a hissy fit and has a go at the internet, because that's the vehicle of which he's after. It's a bit like kicking the paper boy because you don't like what the news is. Silly, silly man.
Yeah, there might be a few books in a good old library that are on the fringe and all the rest of it. However, are you going to ban the library, for God's sake? Honestly, is he anti-education? RTD, have a word with yourself. You sound like one of those dysfunctional societies in science fiction. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. Illiberal.
Yes. It's a funny, isn't it? He's supposed to be writing science fiction, and he's forgotten what science fiction is while he tries to do his messaging and platforming. Now, I think what we'll do is we'll light. Oh no! How are we going to lighten this? With playing your cards right, eh?
There are pieces series. There are pieces series.
Yes, well, we had we had the ratings a bit more today, didn't we? I'll just get everything in position. Well, just to help you along here, folks, I did a breakdown last night of actually each 5 minute of the program, and my dad was kicking off early on, and it's interesting you said George was after about 10 minutes, because you can see. Yeah, you can see where the moment was really. And I'm trying to think, you were up against Britain's Got Talent semi-final live with people pulling vehicles with their eyelids. You know, you had a big diva RuPaul type drag act. You know, it's lively. And meanwhile, on BBC One, as John has been ably saying, you have a few characters stood around with a shaver, and they waffle on, and they have cartoons in the wall. Remember the time as children when we had exposition again and they did drawings of planets, and you thought, wow, can't you just... So there's your 5 minute breakdown. Now, me and Rachel desperately go looking for these, but we haven't quite got a 5 minute breakdown yet. They don't always release them, but I have got this. And so if I'd show you here, just before, I'll go bigger just so to help you out, just before Doctor Who started with the hit list, that enormous juggernaut of a ratings beast, it got when it ended, it got 1.9 million. Doctor Who takes the baton from the relay and immediately drops the baton and loses 200,000 on the pavement crack. And after only 10 minutes, John? 10 minutes?
Yes.
They lost another 100,000.
100,001.
So basically, you start the program with an audience of 1.9 gifted to you. You throw 200,000 away with a prequel about some folk story and some fire in the past. And I don't think that's ever a good start with a drama. That's just a little bit dry and dull. Get into the action, kill somebody, because there was no death in this story. And then by the time your George decided to depart your room, of course, so did another 100,000 odd people, because nothing had happened and they were doing the agenda again. And you just look at that and you go, my God, they don't know how to structure the program. They don't know what they're trying to do. Do they understand their audience? I mean, whoa, where do you start with this, John?
Just for the avoidance that, and this is true, my George followed Ncuti's instructions because he went to the garden to soak the last rays of the sun and sat on the grass. So guess what he was doing instead of watching Doctor Who? Touching grass.
Exactly. Well, and it was probably, and it, yes, the weather's good. In fact, the top show on BBC One was the BBC weather. It was like one of those days.
Yeah, but they can't complain about it because George was doing as instructed by the 15th Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa. If you don't like what we're doing, and he did. And so did a lot of other people. I'm actually surprised it got the ratings that it did, to be honest with you, given the weather, given the semi-final on Britain's Got Talent. So it did well to get that. But nonetheless, I doubt very much, given the nature of that episode, that the same amount of people will come back again next week.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I mean, when you look at that, Hugh, this is your first time for season 2. Being as objective as you can, as we went through rattled through those 5-minute breakdowns, where were you engaged? Were there moments when you thought, "Whoa"?
So I quite liked the start. I thought it was a good cold open because it created the mythos around what was going on. I think the whole "oh look, I'm really comfortable in Lagos" thing was just bizarre, and I can see why people would stop at that point. I got about half an hour into it before I went, "Is this ever going to end?"
Yeah.
Because it was all over the place, and I was going, wait, what's happened? Who's doing that? Why is sort of like why is like Belinda suddenly decided to run through? Why is the TARDIS making that noise? Why is he trying to kill a goat? Everything was why, and then so there's another 15 minutes, and the 15 minutes was even worse.
Yep, and so hence why when you look at that, by the time we got to 25 minutes, we went from 1.6 million to 1.5 million, and it went down again. You know, they've lost now 400,000 people since the program started. You know, well done. We don't have many to play with, and that's not so hot. Now, oh my gosh, I've just heard from the Who Pets. It's happened again. It's amazing, this, you know. I did promise we'd have a different celebration. Here we go.
Yeah!
There we go. So this that was a good old New York. Yes. Thank you very much, G Freers. RTD just hit anyone who loved this once great show and are disheartened to what this show has become. Apathy is all I feel now, sadly. We noticed when we did our season 1 reviews, didn't we? I noticed because Hugh said, I don't know if I'm going to be watching season 2, and he was true to his word. I know so many people who said, I've seen season 1 out and I'm not coming back. And I think we're seeing this play out because as I was showing this morning, if I just get the comparison up, here we go. Let's have a look. There you go. There's season 1 average, overnights or consolidated, and there's season 2. And basically, we've lost about 500,000, basically, in 1 year.
So I'll point out, as John's pointed out about George, I believe we have 10 minutes. My wife, Kath, used to indulge and watch it with me. It was Space Babies that broke her.
Yeah. Well, Hugh, did you? I don't know if you noticed, but there was a little girl in it last night.
Yes.
Yeah,
That, I only realised that today that was who that was. What on earth the point of that is, as a callback, as a reference, whenever it just creates more mess, stop it, Russell, please just stop it.
Do you think it might be to do a point about immigration or refugee status?
Or snot or farts.
Yes, Bogey's a bit bigger. I don't know. I really don't know what's going on. I mean, Rachel, I know you'll be desperately trying to get your mitts on there, something to do with ratings, of course, and you've done your ratings one today, but we haven't got the 5-minute breakdowns yet. But it doesn't really matter because what we see every time is the pattern is down.
Yeah, it's a reflection of how people are feeling about what's going on the screen. One of the biggest complaints that I have seen and what people have told me as well directly, because some people have talked to me directly about this, was that it was the story was too contrived, or it was too wordy, or something along those lines, and lots of people didn't want to do a rewatch because of that.
Yeah.
And even on my review that I did yesterday, I ended up leaving a paragraph in the pinned comments explaining the basic outline of the plot because people still didn't get it. So, so in order to help them along so that they could watch the review and understand what I was going on about, I put that comment in. But it's just reflecting what people are feeling. And I would say with the consolidation of this particular story, it could be a low one because of that. I don't know if the word of mouth is going to be very good. And like Peter Harrington is saying, a lot of people did find it boring as well.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, it's the same old
There were good
story.
points about it, though. There were good points.
Yeah, we'll get to that one point later on. No. So yes, 1.5 million, and that is what we all said. So
Wow.
I said it first, then joined in.
No, you didn't. You were after me.
So yeah, John knew what I was going to say, and he said it first. So
Your mind is easily read.
Yeah, so 1.59. So we were 140,000 on the tight side. Rachel, you were worse. You were worse. You'll be out. But hold on.
I have no shame in that.
But hold on. The Paul, you did think only 4 sad people would watch.
But philosophically, couldn't you say that I was nearest on that basis?
We
Philosophically.
did watch.
We did, yeah, we did. And were we sad? Well, you know. But yeah, we were quite consistent with what our prediction was, and it did a bit better. But this is the thing. It's no good judging the episode you see and then think, what did people watch in retrospect? It's the effect a week later, isn't it? I mean, for example, I think next week's will bump up because of the interest, the Eurovision. It has a brilliant lead in with the FA Cup final, because some people will just be hanging around.
Yeah,
that's assuming it broadcasts. It might not if the cup final overruns.
Britain's Got Talent isn't on next week either.
No, and I've got it here just for everybody just to see. This is basically the competition next Saturday night. You've got Doctor Who 7:10 if there's no extra time on BBC One. It's up against the Orangutans, The Great Escape on BBC Two. Deal or No Deal Celebrity Special. That sounds a bit weak. The Grand Prix and William and Catherine putting family first. I mean, it's a bit summer schedule, isn't it?
I'm definitely watching the orangutans.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a lot to learn about them. They're a complex society. I don't think they're as racist as the Brits.
There are at least 2 people on this panel who won't be watching it live, myself and you, so because we are out next Saturday. So, you can take 2 off. Whatever you predict, take 2 off it then already from this panel.
Well, so this is going to be the hard one, which I in a minute I will ask what your predictions are going to be, but just to give you the context of where we stand at the moment. So that's Saturday night, as was last night on BBC One, and you can see a range there. Celebrity Bridge of Lies 1.3. It was a bad night for BBC One, a really bad night, and even ITV's Britain's Got Talent lost about 350,000 from the week before. Hit List 1.7. Doctor Who 1.59, Blankety Blank just behind it 1.52. Pointless Celebrities beat Doctor Who.
How dreadful is that BBC One lineup? Just take Doctor Who out.
Yeah.
Just a succession of game shows. It's that complete lack of imagination. They ought to hang their heads in shame. That's ITV. They let ITV do that. That's what they're there for. They to make a buck. But
To be fair,
disgrace.
To be fair, Casualty beat it, and we even had Casualty in Doctor Who.
Yeah,
I'm talking about whole Casualty show, game show after game show after game show, and these people are sitting in broadcasting house, paying themselves hundreds of thousands of pounds, schedulers and program makers to come up with lineups like that. It's an absolute disgrace.
I think that's why people tuned into the BBC weather, because it was different. Because at least it was a bit dramatic. Now, Boomer Doug can't help himself, so I've got to follow my audience. I end up being there performing puppet. So thank you very much. Oh, so they get around, don't they? They've even got legs now. So thank you, Boomer Doug. More poopettes, please. I don't think they like being called that. They're in their Brisbane sweatshop working hard. But yes, so you've got an idea of the schedules, folks, and you've got an idea of how everything's tanking. So I better start asking you, therefore, to put. I wonder if Paul says more than 4 this week. I don't know. You don't know. You don't know. So, John, what's your prediction for the Eurovision weekend?
Well, my prediction is I won't be watching it. I'll be out with you having a cocktail. So I would say I agree with both you and Rachel in that it will give a little bump because it's sandwiched between 2 bigger hitters and not just mindless pappy game shows. So I'll go for 1.55.
Right. Okay. Rachel?
Shall I be the optimist and I'll go even higher? I think it will do well because of the sandwiching. I agree with that. I'm going to say it's going to go back up to about 2 million, but I would be interested to see what the 5-minute breakdown would be.
Yeah,
Remember, 2 million
that will be the most telling one.
2 million at the top and 2 million at the bottom, and rock bottom in between.
I wonder. Yeah.
Well, rock bottom 1977. It should have won.
Mike Moran and Lindsay DePaul.
Yeah, very good. I like that one. Paul, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I was a little frivolous last time. Just picking 4. There are 5 of us here now, so I'll say 5. So slight increase.
Good for you,
Five
Paul.
of us picked 2 of us won't be watching.
Remember, there's 5 of us here and 2 of us will be out, so that's actually 3.
Oh dear. So Hugh, I will have your scores on next week, even if I don't know if you're here or not. You won't be on this one, but go on, Hugh.
1.75.
1.75. And I was toying with that. I have to say, yes, I thought it was a really poor episode to get people coming back, and then you balance that with the fact that it's Eurovision and so I'm going to go. I was going to say 1.77. I'm going to go 1.8. So middle to diddle there. So 1.8 and see what happens. So we'll find out next week. So there we go. That was our little item on the ratings. So you know what we're going to do next. We've got to get into this. We've got to start talking about the episode, the criteria, where we stand on it, what we think of it. So if I get my stuff together, because I have to say I am so kind of let's have a look. Right, so the Tombstone Totaliser. Right, let me just get my buttons pressed and we will start. Oh, so he needs to get that sorted out, doesn't he? So basically, there's your season 1. That'll give you.
It's not getting any
No.
better, is it?
So there you go. That'll give you nightmares, Hugh, from last year. The best one was 79 out of 150 points available each week, and we had down to Devil's Court 27. We, as anybody, if they've just joined us, may have noticed, I'll just go big screen there. Those are the scores this season so far. Robot Revolution 82 out of 150, Lux 58. The Well did the best so far, 101, and then Lucky Days 61. So where are we going to stand this week? So as people know pretty well now, we have 3 criteria. Excuse me, we're not the bingo. I mean, I have to say, I judged my bingo, and my God, did I have the sci-fi card was full of material. But if I just kind of click along here, because it's a tired little frame there. Yeah, Brendan, get the right place. There you go. We mark out of 10. You can see there you go. And special measures is 1 to 3. Needs improvement is 4 to 6. Good is 7 to 8. That's how we do it. So now we're going to start with the first item. So I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know where they're going to go. I have an idea. But basically, John, was this True Who or Boo Who? Was this safeguarding Doctor Who?
This was probably the worst episode of Doctor Who I've had to sit through, but that was because it wasn't Doctor Who. It was nothing near what Doctor Who is or was. There was nothing remotely. Okay, back in the day, you had really bad Doctor Who stories. We all had them. Each Doctor has had them. But at their core was the Doctor. You'd think you could save it, but it's Hartnell, Baker, whoever lifted a story because you knew they were there. You felt they were there for you, and you enjoyed that characterization. This was a Doctor Who story, which not only wasn't Doctor Who, it didn't have a Doctor in it because this one, I don't know who this man's playing, but it's not the Doctor, and he went out of his way to be anti-Doctor in terms of some of the things he said at the beginning of this episode and throughout it. So no, this was most definitely Boo-hoo, and it's the most Boo-hoo Doctor Who has ever been. This will never be watched again in our house. This probably like most of the other episodes in this season was before will never be watched again. But this one, especially, would it have to be a cold day in hell for me for this to cross my mind again as an example of Doctor Who, let alone watch the thing. And that merited a score that I thought I would never give any Doctor Who story.
Yeah, it's going to be shocking today, folks. The scores. Hugh, obviously you were really pleased I invited you back to watch this. So, was it True Who or Boo Who?
No, I mean it's just not Doctor Who at all. And to pick up on the point that John was making about the character not being Doctor Who, I actually think Rogue's worse in terms of overall idea of what Doctor Who is, but the idea that whenever he gets called into the barber shop and he shouts at his one-time friend for effectively calling for help is a complete betrayal of what Doctor Who is all about. He should have been happy to be there to save people. Otherwise, it's not Doctor Who. And at that point, I think I just lost it last night.
Brendan, just on what Hugh said there, doesn't the Doctor actually pull up this character, the Barber, for hiding behind something that's not his name, the Barber? Isn't that what the Doctor does? It continues to do.
Yeah, and he laughs hysterically, which
I could sort of get the Doctor laughing hysterically because he's then going to go and talk about his meetings with gods. But why is Belinda laughing hysterically since she doesn't know any of that?
I just think this era has got so messy now, but it's quite anti-religion, this era. It's very cynical about religion. Okay, great. That's how you're going to do it because it's a scientific drama. However, the gods are now all real. And you think, oh, hold on a minute. So gods are real, but religion is naff and religion is for idiots. This is the Moffat Chibnall RTD nexus now, isn't it? I mean, Rachel.
But we're back at there's a sort of traditional Western religion is all naff. The Nigerian religion is really interesting.
Well, of course, and their artwork and everything. Rachel, I'm starting to see too many double standards here. And Doctor Who did have a healthy skepticism about religion, Planet of Fire, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But it seems now to say that gods are real.
I thought that was a bit of a contradictory statement, seeing as the Doctor always relies on fact and science. And this particular Doctor bashes religion quite a fair bit, in my opinion. Yeah. That's just my opinion. Yeah. Now, unfortunately for me, this story is not Doctor Who. Okay. I think the visuals that you got on the screen and the visuals that we saw throughout the entire story are very good. I think the script writer who wrote this does have the ability to write That's for sure. Whether or not it was the right choice to employ this particular script writer for this is very, very debatable. However, what made me give the score that I gave, even though it's not really like Doctor Who, there were 2 moments that were like Doctor Who, even though they're not perfect, and I think they could have been done better. One of those is the companion didn't really do anything. Okay, the companion's gone back to asking who, what, why, where, being the audience's eyes into what is technically going on. And then the other one is, and yes, it is flat. I do agree that it's flat, but the Doctor is the one that solves the problem at the end of it. And he is the one that makes sure that everyone gets out. He is the one that stops that spider leaving at that point. And for a playwright to come in and say, right, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to resolve it, and have the Doctor do it when our beloved showrunner can't even do that at the moment, that must be incredibly embarrassing. So yeah.
What's even worse though, Paul, is I know what Rachel's saying about the Doctor seemed to be the solution, but it was actually the classic Doctors who were the solution, the older Doctors.
No. He brings it all in. It ties all together.
What do you know what he says, Rachel? He says on.
On.
Yes. And then it plays all the old Doctors.
Look, I didn't say it was a great resolution, okay? He still saves it.
But it's I know what you're saying. It's just that it seems like all the other Doctors are actually the solution. The shooty Doctor just goes what they said earlier. He doesn't really do anything. He was crap.
No, he doesn't really do anything. You're right, but he does have the resolution. It's normally the companion in recent years that's had the solution. I just prefer it when it's the Doctor that solves it, and in this case, it was, even though it was a lame duck.
I mean, Paul, whether you take it from the Dalek invasion of Earth and you think of the Ian Chesterton moment, or in the movie with Bernard Cribbins when he opens the door and nearly falls, that moment, a moment of jeopardy. In this case, the Doctor was highly irresponsible and opened the blooming door, and they could have all been sucked out into the vortex. He wasn't using his brain at all. This Doctor is in La La Land.
Absolutely, that was the part that, for me, just made me realize that I already realized it, but made me realize more that this definitely wasn't Doctor Who, because they were talking about the space outside being different from inside or some such. And that's entirely something that the Doctor would be curious about. I don't think he'd be so disavowing about the possibility, given that his everyday occupation delves into things like this, the supernatural or science fiction or things that can't easily be explained. So his idea of just leaving and just essentially leaving it at that and not even trying to sort of solve things, that was as undoctorish as you can imagine. This is reflective of entirely what happened. Davies went to the theatre. He bagged himself somebody who was unfit for purpose, and he needed him to prosecute the agenda that I've already mentioned, the ethnic cleansing, the racism, and he was fit for purpose in that regard. He was quite willing, and Davies didn't need to exert any kind of editorial control because he didn't care about the story. All he cared about was shoehorning in this agenda, bringing it to the fore, and giving us what we were given.
And we can't be saved by the fact that, I'm going to bring this up. I.F. Horus asks whether Huey or Barusa, because he mentions your wallpaper. Is it from The Deadly Assassin?
I can't possibly comment on my past incarnations.
Actually, just for the avoidance of doubt, it is Barusa, but it's from the Invasion of Time.
Oh, yes.
Where Barusa hid the great key amongst the whole forest of keys. So this incarnation of Barusa that Hugh is playing is the John Arnott second version.
So, God, if I'm really going to try and say boohoo or not, I thought this was a clever, imaginative moment. A barber's shop on the back of a spider in space is very Doctor Who. It really is. There's only Doctor Who, I think, that would even consider doing stuff like this. That was the beauty of it. You know, I always remember that period, and I was joking about the creature from the pit, but actually in the creature from the pit, there is with Erato, there's all that stuff about what the TARDIS did with the star coming and weaving, and only Doctor Who would do that. So I thought that was very Doctor Who in itself. It's just that
You seem to have an Erato fetish. Keep bringing it back to that big green thing where they have pendage.
he's
kinky.
lovely, Erato. He needs to be brought back.
You're kinky.
But honestly, I felt, oh gosh. So you have this great moment, but at least in the creature from the pit, it was a dramatic moment. Is the TARDIS going to blow up? That sort of thing. And they couldn't, you know, it did all the usual drama and jeopardy, plenty of jeopardy. And that was in episode 4, where sometimes they tank those ones. In this one, the spider just kind of just disappeared really and blew up. But I don't know why. If that's kind of the engine or the god, I'm trying to work out, have the gods been killed now? Because the Doctor was going mad about the gods being killed, and then all 7 billion people have nothing to talk about. I was really confused on that poor spider. That spider was not a bad graphic, actually, and yet it came to nothing. It had no personality. At least you had the giant spider and Metabela screen. It all made sense to me.
You've lost sound a bit there, Brenda. Just to let you know, on your mic, you lost your sound a bit. You're a bit muffled.
Well, I'll just keep talking.
Yeah, I know that's. But then just to say to you, but more to the point about that spider exploding, there was absolutely zero point in us watching this because they included that scene in the trailer, not only for this episode, for the whole season. So we were well aware of what happened to this creature well before even watching the episode.
Yes, I know. It was in the German trailer. They went mad about it, actually, the BBC. It was in the German trailer because those little streamers all had it translated, and it was in that one that they showed you the spider blowing up. So yes, thank you, Germany. But yeah. Douze Pois. So yeah, there was the jeopardy moment in the chair. Whoa. And then there was the vortex moment. This bit at the end, I am getting absolute. It's classic New Who. Quick reset, a load of blather. And before you know it, whatever tension you try to build, suddenly it's kind of bang, bang, bang. We're going at 5th gear and it's bang, 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 run here, and it's all done. And we even have time at the end to say, do you want to try another barbershop? I think you're a nice person, really. And the thing here was the Doctor last week hated Conrad Clark, despised him because he spread conspiracies on Sir Tim Berners-Lee's ugly World Wide Web. However, the barber who was going to, cause merry hell and rule over people, he can start again with another barber shop. Was there any issue? Because, was it a skin cut? Was it because he's one of his own and he was a bit softer with? I mean, I can't help it, Paul. I can't help it.
Even if the Doctor were white, this would still be the philosophy that we're trying to push. It would be that people of color can do no wrong, and it's the big bad white people.
Hyper liberal.
Yes.
Overreach.
And it seemed a shame that spider had all the cultural iconography. These masks were in the trailer, and I thought, oh, this looks tasty. But they were baiting us over nothing. We never really saw these in play.
It's one shot, isn't it?
Yeah.
One shot. Yeah, that. Oh, they could have put that into more sort of action. I'm going to be talking about the script anyway for the next part, so I won't go too much into it. But they could have really upped the jeopardy with something like that.
Yeah, no jeopardy, no death. The Doctor wasn't the Doctor. There was a bit of a space moment that I didn't mind. The conclusion I'm getting bored with. I'm bored with the 45 minuters. I think they've become tired formula. I think we've got people writing for it who don't understand Doctor Who. It's an apprenticeship now. Alan Sugar will be saying you're fired. We're in an absolute mess. And so, yeah, knowing all that, I'll get back to my kind of here comes the scores. Oh, is everybody ready? What would you give out of 10, everybody, on whether that was Doctor Who or not? Because this is what my panel thought. Here we go.
Oh, wow.
So if
I was the most generous. I did give it a 3 originally, but I gave it an extra point for the Doctor resolving the issue.
There you go, everybody. So Paul and John with a terrible twosome on 0. They were the Norway. And Hugh, who obviously has been biding his time with all his mark schemes, watching none of season 2, has been very, very tight with his 2. Rachel's freaking out. She was on the drink yesterday, 4. And
water.
And I was on the 3. So there you go. So that meant out of a grand total of 50, it got 9. It got 9 out of 50.
Wow.
Ooh, which means 18% possible there was available. I mean, there you go. This is looking good, everybody. Nigel Jones would have given it a 1. Stephen Braddock would have given it 0 points. Divine and Dragon, 0 points. I mean, this is a worry. Sean, 0. Dalek Lives Matters, 0. JWC, 2. So you can see we're on the money. So we move to the next criteria, the effective use of the production values. Now, remember, this is where the panel can pick. You can't discuss all of these. If you decide, for example, it's the acting and the selection of the actors, you will make a big play on that and say how that really sold the atmosphere or whatever it was meant to do. It's up to the panel. So, John, what did you want to say about the effective use of production values and budget?
Basically, there wasn't much. I understand from what I've read that they sent a drone to Nigeria to get an authentic overall shot of the marketplace. But other than that, everything was filmed at Badwood Studios in Wales, and I think it looked like it too. The set where the barbershop looked exactly like that. It looked like something you would expect to find walking into a theatre before the actors come and join the set. And with that, there's nothing wrong. But for a multi-million pound science fiction program the Doctor Who's supposed to be, it didn't satisfy. The direction I thought was plodding. There could have been a chance to get the actors to deliver lines differently, to shoot it differently, to add a bit more zing to what was an effectively flat script. The director chose not to do that. Maybe he was unable to do that. Maybe it was peeing in the wind because the script was that bad, or just being overruled by the producer Russell Davis. I don't know. The spider, again, a good CG effect, but the problem with modern day Doctor Who is there is nothing really for the Doctor to interact with, or the companion to interact with. Everything is done sort of in isolation. It's on a screen, or it's up there in space, or it's somewhere else. Rarely, we had it last week, and that turned out to be a man in a false rubber costume. We rarely get a collection of nice, slowering aliens menacing trapped humans, or the Doctor and a set of trapped humans in a confined space. That's what old school Doctor Who used to do. So at the minute, where this money is being spent, I don't know, but I'm not seeing it. And this perhaps is reflected in my score, that perhaps it looks reasonable, but I'm not seeing the money, and I'm not seeing it being spent on doing what Doctor Who would do the best, which is scaring kids. Those 2 masks you showed there were particularly frightening. You imagine just doing more with that in terms of these stories coming to life, menacing the people in that barbershop, whatever way the story took to turn. doing what Doctor Who should do. Doctor Who's not about messaging. It can be occasionally, but essentially it's about entertaining and frightening us and making us to want to come back the next week. Doctor Who's not there to change the world. It's there to entertain us. So to that extent, production resources failed this week.
I mean, Tomboy Chick here, they wasted the spider and creepy ghosty face. That's maybe a point, Tomboy, where basically you can be saying they had all the production values and resources there, but they misused them in, I mean, that wasn't the main game, was it? The main game was the cast in a way, because it was like a tight cast. So they had to do all the work with words because you weren't going to get much. Hugh, what did you reckon on?
So I really liked it. I thought it looked nice. It was cheery. I thought some of the drawings were really good. I thought the switch between doing the drawings and the casualty episode the Doctor went through was quite interesting in terms of doing it. I enjoyed the cast, apart from the fact that quite a lot of them had nothing to do. So I really liked it, as long as I wasn't thinking of it as Doctor Who.
Oh, you mean like every week then? Because it is starting to get like that. I don't know when I last saw proper Doctor Who. So, Paul, just ask you then. So on production resources and what you saw there, your thoughts?
Well, as I always say, for me, it's about a composite effect. And if I've asserted that this isn't Doctor Who, then it means that every facet of the production has resulted in that. And all I got from this, all this endeavor, assuming there was any, was that it was a very closeted, exclusionary scenario with which we were presented. And it didn't engage me. I understand what you and Rachel say about there being Doctor Who tropes. I do understand that. But for me, if there's no real weight behind it, and if the writer doesn't have any competency, it amounts to one of those sketches we used to watch as kids, Crackerjack, or was it Three of a Kind, where they'll lampoon Doctor Who, but you'll know even as a kid that there's no real plausibility to it, and there's no real sort of degree of accuracy, authenticity. And that's what I felt about this. I recognized that certain things were trying to be Doctor Who tropes, but the guy just didn't have what it took. And yeah, I just can't accept any of these production facets. I just can't.
Yeah, I mean, Rachel, I was pulled towards, production values regarding the effects and the imagery and the visuals is what most people are listing. However, I got distracted by the accents. Now, not accents per se. I'm well traveled. I've been around the world like a lot of us have. That's not the issue. I struggled to understand them sometimes, though. Sometimes they were quietly spoken. And I just
I wondered if there were some sound issues going on as well with how they did the sound for this. But yeah, I had to watch this with subtitles in order to make out everything that was being said. And some of that was natural accent getting in the way. And that is something that needs to be worked on. You can use those accents, fine. I don't care about that. Some of this was lost in that sense. But for me, though, I looked at specifically the script. I think its biggest issue is you said this was because RTD had seen his Barbershop Chronicles at the National, right? So we already know that he's got a high caliber status if he's writing for the National. So we know that he's good. But what he's done is he's taken something that is meant for the stage and he's put it into a TV show instead. And that doesn't always work. Sometimes you need to overhaul it completely in order to make it work. If Big Finish had come along and said, hey, we want your Barbershop Chronicles to be done in this type of way, would you be able to do it? You could write it for audio. It probably could work for audio. But in this case, it really doesn't. I think that it was too wordy, and you have to go back and rewatch it in order to fully understand what's going on. I know I was distracted by looking after a dog as well, but even then I shouldn't have had to really rewatch it to fully understand it, but I ended up doing so. I think that some of the elements that we had in the script, like some of the reveals that we had, could have been added into some of the previous stories and done earlier in order to set up perhaps for this story. And I think it was too static, and that's because it was taken from the stage and put into a TV program. And yeah, I feel like he needed guidance as well.
Yeah,
And he didn't get it. He's a good writer, I think, for stage, but
I think he's been thrown under the bus
I
because, in a
think so.
way,
Yeah,
okay, I mean, come on. He says in an interview that he's been trying for 12 years to get anything on the TV. So, of course,
right. Yeah,
RTD comes running, and you go, yes, 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 and I'm a Doctor Who fan, so go for it. The snag is, as you say, we know that they've done season 1 and season 2 back to back, and my concern is RTD has not really had the time, and his pitch to Anaya Williams, Ellen, sorry, clearly was something like, can you do that, the barbershop idea with Doctor Who? And he's
yeah,
gone, right, okay. And he's tried his best, and he said he's
yes.
tried to mix that magic with science thing, which I don't think works. But I can't see where there's been any kind of intrusion. Just like with Rogue, those two inexperienced writers for Doctor Who, they went too far. And
Yeah.
it's funny, isn't it? It's both episode 5 in season 1 and season 2 where it looks as though he's let them have too much leeway, not given them enough guidance, and the fans are coming for them both barrels.
It's bottled, so you need the intensity. It's bottled because he's a playwright as well, so that is adding a lot to it. The actors are the actors are bringing the script to life as well as they possibly can, but they needed more. They needed more of that oomph in order to be able to really sell it. The ideas are there. He needed that guidance. He needed RTD to sit down and look over that script, or somebody who is experienced in sci-fi writing to look over that script and go, right, okay, so we've got this story going on. Why don't we have this happening around them whilst this is happening? And the way that they got to get it back under control is by telling this story, not just a light flashing. Oh, it's time to cut our hair. Let's tell a story. Go. It's too calm.
It didn't mean anything. I was waiting. Were you, as Doctor Who fans,
Yeah.
in that beginning? I was thinking the red light, somebody will die or be incinerated. Something will happen, and then
Yeah.
you will, and then as the viewer, you'll go, oh gosh. And when the Doctor's stuck in the chair, you think, oh, you could be incinerated, and that's
Yeah.
how it works. That's called drama.
When the Doctor opens the door, like
Yeah.
one Omo maybe flies out into the Nexus. The Doctor's got to get him back. How is he going to get him back? Or they all run into the heart of the machine. And then what's going to happen? The machine goes bonkers. The machine goes crazy. There's so many things it could do with it. I mean, look at this on the screen, what you got here. That's pretty good. They played that really well, but it just was, there was no oomph behind it, you know?
That's when you don't have cash. That's what happens at the barbers when you don't have cash. They go mad. No, John, we've mentioned pace and everything else, but on this Criteria 2 thing, I think there's a horrible disjointedness nowadays with Doctor Who, which is 1 minute they focus their time on, yes, the messaging, they focus their time on a light moment, and the Doctor was glad handing everybody in that market as if he knew the whole of Lagos. How you doing? He was doing all them weird handshakes, DDD, all that stuff. So we had time to do the lightness. And when it got to tension and stuff, they forgot.
Yeah, or more to the point, scaring
Yeah.
the viewers. That's what whenever he talks with Doctor Who, it's always mentioned with the usual classic from behind the sofa or from behind a pillow. There's none of that here. So I bring it back to the question I asked way back when we started the stream. Who is this program for? Why are they making it? What is the intention of Russell Davis going to the theatre with Ncuti Gatwa to see a play by this writer, asking for him to write for the program and concocting this storyline and story and putting it out there? Why? What is their intention? Why does this exist within what supposedly is an adventure series for young people to watch with families? I just don't know. And if you don't know who your audience is, the chances are that's why you end up making garbage like
Yeah.
this.
So
I think. Sorry.
no, go on, Paul.
I think Davies' intention has, for some time now, been to purge fandom of people like us, people in the chat, people in our community, because we're too critical and we don't want the Doctor Who that he wants. We're not in accord with the ideologies that he prosecutes. And that's it. I think he's quite happy to have a dwindling fandom. I think once it's distilled into the type of people who appreciate what he's doing, I think then he'll be happy. And I think ratings to him, I know it's counterintuitive to believe this, but I think ratings for him are incidental at best. I just don't think he cares.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on, Paul, because it's actually in the scripts now. Last week, Conrad represented someone who writes on the internet, something we really shouldn't be believing or listening to. And this week, we've got the internet being at fault as well, because the internet is the tool by which people like Conrad can get at people like you. It's just beyond
Yeah,
belief.
and we had time to have the Doctor was married or was going to be married to a woman, and all that froth that I got sick of in the Stephen Moffat era, and we had all that froth again. You know, nah. They were trying.
The other aspect about this, and I think it's picking up from what Paul said. I in the sense of this not being Doctor Who, I enjoyed the production, but that's the problem. Am I supposed to watch something and say this is not Doctor Who, but I quite enjoyed it? Because that's what happened with Rogue. I actually found Rogue quite funny, as long as I wasn't thinking of it as Doctor Who.
Yeah. So this is our conundrum, everybody. I could see tiny moments of Doctor Who, but not enough. There was no Doctor either. I like the music. The music was able to do its cultural appropriation. That's what they call it. And it had nice touches and flourishes. However, the script, as we're going to come to, I think, in criteria 3, because you can only discuss it there, really. The resolution, did it land? And I have to say, when it's wordy, it's okay in the theatre because you're limited with sets and stuff. But with a TV program with Disney money, let actions speak louder than words. And as somebody was saying in my earlier stream, they said, why don't you have Dalek down corridor? Exterminate. Then you have a bit of dialogue. Then Dalek does something else. Then another bit of dialogue. Then Dalek goes up the stairs and chases the Doctor. You know, come on, you punctuate with these moments in Doctor Who. You don't just bore us to death. And I think that's what pacing was terrible. Too worthy it was trying to be. So, what did we score it? Here we go. There you go. So Paul 0, John 3, Hugh 9, Rachel 5, and myself 7. For the reasons we've just said, really. Do people agree or disagree? Remember, we're saying, have they used the resources available? I think, do you know what? They spent so much time thinking, we need it to make it look like a proper Nigerian market. We need to get an advisor in. We need to do this. We need to do... Oh, they were so dying to do a good job on this, but they just forgot to make a story.
Yeah. What's the word I keep saying?
Humorous.
Yes. These are people who so up themselves, they think we're just going to lap this up. Or more importantly, related to Paul's point, in an effort to offload the old fandom because he wants to appeal to his new audience, he thinks he can talk to, even they are getting, to use the Glasgow word, scunnered with exactly what he's doing, because in addition to all the messaging and all the nice things that the liberal overreach that he's doing, he's just not creating a story that'll hold anybody. This is just, forget everything else, it's just boring.
Yeah. Now, Lee Smith asks about the 9, but I think you did explain that, didn't you, Hugh? About
I mean, as I say, I was looking at it as a piece of theatre, and I thought the cold open was really good. I thought a lot of the performances, I'm leaving aside the 3 guys who didn't have anything to do, but I thought the barber, I thought the other barber, I thought So we all sort of gelled, and it looked good, and I thought there was quite a lot of stuff on it, and it was pretty. It was a pretty shiny thing, but that doesn't reflect in terms of my score, obviously, for the first one, and it won't affect my score for the second one. That bit was almost like taking it as completely non-Doctor Who, and I thought I thought it was an interesting piece of television, but it's just not Doctor Who.
Yeah, and we all look at one individual thing, really. So
yeah, and that's what we have to do, because it's too large. You know, we're trying to be aware that everybody's got a life as well. It's nice that you've come to watch us, but you know, there's other things to talk. So 24 out of 50. So clearly, it's just short of the halfway mark. 48% of the votes possible. Now I've just
and most of that's me.
yeah. Most of that's you. I mean, this is it. Michelle scored it well as well. I mean, Michelle has been sending me scores, but she had it quite high as well. Well, we've had some more news in. Hold on.
Yeah!
Oh yes. I've been told from the Brisbane sweatshop that we've had a super chat. Thank you very much, Randy Howell. Thank you. At least there wasn't a barbershop quartet, or is that? Yeah. Can you imagine if we had a musical little moment? Oh, that would have killed me. I hate barbershop quartets.
We wouldn't go so far as to put the Doctor singing and dancing in Doctor Who, would they? They wouldn't do that. Can't believe they do that.
I think, as Randy says, and I think you know as well, John, that I think next week might be a killer.
Yeah, I'm saying. Remember, I won't be in for it. I may stay out for it forever.
So, last one, but it's not least, because it's whether it landed. Was the resolution good? Did it make sense? Did it engage? We've already used words like boring and theatrical, which can be a euphemism. So, I'll start with our actress, Rachel.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, okay. Right, back to business. I got distracted by the chat. Sorry. So yeah, was I engaged? Yes, but I don't know if I like this or not. Okay. There were many a problem that we have with this particular story. The resolution, yeah, okay, the Doctor is the problem solver. Great, good, but how it was done, it was just not the way that I would have liked it to have been done. I would have liked the jeopardy to have been there. I would have liked perhaps the barber to really have gone forward to the gods and tried to kill the gods, and the Doctor is trying to stop them, and they're all trying to fight this barber off. You really make him truly the villain who has to face his consequences rather than not face his consequences. The fact that he doesn't face his consequences lets it down for me as well, in my opinion. I do like the everybody lives aspect, but I prefer it when, sorry to say this, perhaps when maybe one person doesn't make it, if you know what I'm saying. The villain should have definitely got his comeuppance. It's clear, and I will say, is it good story writing? It's clear that he can write. I will say that, but it really does feel like that this whole entire story was a bit of a bait, and I think they should remove the ideology from it, replace the words with action, and put the tension in, and then I think you've got potential to have a really good story. But they didn't do that, so it really just did not pay off, unfortunately.
No, this is a television program, and this would have been a radio play. It was so wordy.
And it would have been fine as a radio play, I think. Yeah.
Now, as I go through, I'm going to test you all out here. John, did it make sense?
Sorry, 1 sec. Randy Howell, the resolution was a wet fart.
Oh, yes.
Carry on, Brendan.
You said that. Yeah. John, did it make sense, its resolution? And what did you grasp from it? Because everybody online are all going, did you get it? Did you understand it? Did you get it? What did you take from it with your one viewing?
One thing I took from it is that I would only ever have one viewing. That was it. That my husband would never even have that one viewing in 10 minutes of a viewing. And that's all you need to know. That, look, first principles. I've been saying this throughout. Why does Doctor Who exist? To entertain, frighten, to get us behind the couch, whatever it is, or any of those things. It should be thrilling adventures in time and space. Doctor Who was. I don't know what this was. It may well have merit on a stage play about barbershop quartets and storytelling, African storytelling. Absolutely. But that's not what I tuned in. I tuned for Doctor Who. I'm more than happy for Doctor Who to tap into other cultures and for Doctor Who to use whatever it wants to do to try and make us do or think whatever it needs us to do. But that's chiefly to keep us thrilled and entertained and all those things. This did none of those. From beginning to end, I was neither thrilled, entertained, I didn't move to the end of my seat. I was simply bored. And I really kept checking my watch to check how much more of this is there to go. And the minute you do that, the programme, no matter how worthy, no matter how inspired the writer, no matter how clever the effects, it has failed. And this failed that. Certainly wasn't Doctor Who, but even out with the fact that this wasn't Doctor Who, it wasn't just a very satisfying piece of television.
You see, I had to work hard on all these transcripts, which take minutes and minutes because they did these bits slowly. And I didn't really grasp what the hell was going on. And actually, when you scrutinize it, it does not make sense. It doesn't.
Well, hold on, Brendan. If I keep saying that we should have to scrutinize it. This is made for a Saturday night audience or people to drip into a big player to watch once, really engage with it. It's not there to be scrutinized. And the fact that even after scrutiny, you still have problems with it proves there's something seriously wrong with the script. And for a showrunner to be paying himself, whatever Russell Davies is paying himself, to produce stuff like this in the name of Doctor Who is ridiculous.
So you see, we've got people desperately trying to get to understand it here. So, for example, let's have a look. JWC Reviews, for example. I understood that stories, myths, legends were metaphorically the thing that could power cultures, but destroying the gods made little sense. One of my issues was that barber immortal? Because he said, for centuries, I collected stories. And I'm thinking, how did you do that? How did you collect the god's blood or essence? How did that work? How did you make this stupid little looking magic circle of wires and that suddenly became this big beast? Oh, there was a bit of a leap there. There was a bit of sloppy writing there. And of course, Ellum said, I am a Doctor Who fan. If you're a bloody Doctor Who fan, where was the peril? Where was the fun? Where was the adventure? Where were the thrills and spills? Where were the monsters? Where was anything happening? Barbershop Chronicles, well done. You wrote a play for the National Theatre, but where was the Doctor Who? If you're a Doctor Who fan, you clearly didn't understand it. And so, of course, how was it engaging me as a Doctor Who fan who wants thrills and spills? Where were they? And it to me, it felt too worthy. It felt as though it was trying to do clever things, but it fell flat.
But isn't that the story of this entire run?
Well,
it's the story of this entire run, that they're so busy being worthy and liberal and whatever it is they want to do. Look, nobody knows my politics. I'm not going to say it here. I might agree with everything they're trying to do, but you know what? They're failing because they're just getting people turned off and just tuned out because they're not, even if we want the message, their delivery system is so poor that it's not worth doing. It's nonsense. It's a disgrace and it's boring.
Yeah, go on, Rachel.
This is one of those.
You might get the fact that I didn't like it.
This is one of those scripts, even without any agendas that are in it. You need to tell the writer to show us, not tell us. Yeah. Because this is a lot of telling. This is a lot of information overload. And if you're aiming this at children or teenagers, then that could be a problem. It's got to be obtainable, but not all the way up to the sky. obtainable. It's got to be just over their head, so then they can just go back in and say, rewatch it, or maybe in a few years' time they'll fully understand it. In this case, this is not happening at all. It's just it's just high in its attainability.
Rachel, I taught about 28,000 lessons of English, and
Wow.
sure not tell is basically what you say. And I was just imagining being a teacher waffling on. They all know I'm a Doctor Who fan, and if anyone saw this episode, they'd have said, "But how come that was doing all loads of telling, and it's just words and words and words and nothing?" And I'd have gone, "Well, yeah, but actually, that's what the examiner wants, the complete opposite." A playwright, a poet, did everything against the national curriculum. Absolutely ballsed it up. It was so slow. Everything was intangible. Why don't you make something vivid, visceral, there? No. And it was just, I'll give you an idea. I understand why, Hugh, you like the prequel at the beginning and it's stylized how it was set up. The thing is, though, they set it up as here's a story about a story and here's a bit of a flat story in itself. They were so clever ass about saying the power of stories that the actual story that was written was crap.
No, I agree. I mean, I absolutely agree with that. The thing, and the problem with doing stories about stories, and again, sort of like whenever we started and referenced Kinder, Kinder's about that as well. But it also has huge amounts of jeopardy because the planet's about to be blown up by a madman, and that's real, despite the fact that some of the stuff isn't. And this stuff, it was too ethereal in the end about what that is. And it needs to extend beyond that. And say, I thought it looked pretty and I enjoyed looking at it. But it was more like a painting than a television program.
Yeah, and on the other side, they've got all the thrills and spills going on. Paul, you've sat there patiently and quietly, but how engaged?
I agree with pretty much everything, so there's no need to add anything really. But my impression of this, in terms of the writing, was that it was a first draft that Davies didn't see the need to correct, and if he had, even allowing for the unwholesome messaging, which I despise, at least he could have tightened things up. He must have known at some level that this didn't really represent an episode of Doctor Who. He must have known that it was too wordy and that things weren't moving along and it wasn't really going anywhere. He must have known that the resolution wasn't very cohesive with what had been heralded before. So he could have done something about this. If he'd really cared, he could have done something about this. But as I said before, all he did care about was this populating it with people of color. And once he'd achieved that, he felt that everything else could fall into place. And once that message was delivered, and it was, let's be honest, it was delivered emphatically, then he felt that his job was done. And I imagine to a lesser extent, so did the writer. I think the writer is a little more complicit in the narrative that's being pushed here. I don't feel that he's been completely forsaken and that Davies just left him to his own devices entirely. I think that he's responsible for pushing the agenda as well. And I think he was all too happy to do that. And between the two of them, they've given us something which was utterly woeful.
Well,
so
Paul,
I think, I don't know enough details about the play, but I think that this was written sort of like off the back of a play, which was about an actual sort of black experience and stuff like that as a person. I think it misses out entirely that it's Doctor Who, and the bits that are shoehorned in as Doctor Who, I think might be Russell making it even worse. So I think it was bad, and I actually think Russell made it worse.
And I was going to say to Paul that one of the issues is when we had the Rosa episode with the Rosa Parks, again, Chibnall there was trying to be worthy and diversify the stories told in Doctor Who. Nothing wrong with that. But actually, when they wrote it, Mallory Blackman, when they wrote Rosa, they forgot the Doctor Who bit. So basically, the Doctor sat on the bus and kind of watched Rosa Parks and did bot all. And then, of course, as I say in many of my streams, you have a black companion. You could have had him in peril, show not tell, you know, he faces a lynch mob, massive jeopardy. Nobody on the planet watching that would have thought racism in any way could be justified. It was sitting there, it was ripe for a brilliant, very dark Doctor Who historical, a bit like some of the 60s ones. But what, they missed the boat.
Yes. Yeah. That's what tokenism, that's all that tokenism achieves, though. Once they feel that they've inserted what they need to insert, they don't need to flesh things out, or they don't feel a need to flesh things out. I think the story, the likes of Chibnall and Moffat to an extent as well towards the end of his tenure, and certainly this incarnation of Davies, I think that the messaging will always distort things. It's all they care about, and I think they're happy about that. It's a truly awful time for the show. My relief is that it completely cauterizes what we know and love to be Doctor Who from this. This is a little offshoot which we never really have to worry about contaminating the main show. The only worry for me is that the more that this goes on with the next 3 episodes or so, and then what might be beyond that, it's going to make a return for the show less and less tenable.
Yeah.
And it's just going to queer the pitch, because now, where once there was affection for this show in 2005 when it came back, even people who perhaps weren't fans, they held it in affection because it was a British institution and it proven its solidity time and time again. So everybody knew about it and knew its worth. But now, the only thing that's seeped into the culture and the consciousness is the idea that it's this pontificating, storyless entity. And who's going to want to see that back? I can't think of anybody who would want that back, apart from the distillation of fandom that Davies is actually trying for.
On the resolution then, and on whether it landed, I want to ask some quick questions of you all, just dead fast. So John, why did the hair grow back when he just cut it?
Grecian 2000.
I mean, because again, wasn't explained, was it?
No, I don't. Not like Brendan, but why would you expect nothing else was properly explained or properly fed through this and all this? It just poor.
Hugh, what was, when you finished the episode, which bits of exposition did you think, or you could have explained that because you've got away with murder there? What was, you know, something that was kind of just bothering you when we'd finished?
All right, so just tiny thing that's mentioned earlier, the appearance of Poppy from Bloody Space Babies. What on earth is that about? Because presumably that's not the writer. That's Russell saying, "Oh, we've still got the tiny actress that did this, and she'll just walk on. It won't have any meaning, but it might have meaning. But who cares? And who's going to know that? I mean, if you're a casual watcher, that's a complete waste of time."
Yep. Oh, well, it's like Mrs. Flood. I mean, a casual viewer wouldn't know what the hell was going on. Oh, a lady said she's getting some pills. Who cares? There's a kid. Oh, she's disappeared. Who cares? There's so much I could go mad. Randy Howell, you've been very generous here. I'll get your point across. Speaking of Jodie, her episodes are no longer available to stream in Canada. Series 1 to 10 was picked up by Amazon Prime in Canada, but not Jodie's. Oh, do we read in?
Funny that.
Well, she's sneaking in all the time, like the fugitive doctor in all these episodes, you know. And there is talk, isn't there, Rachel, that she's going to be in the finale?
Well, I don't know. I've not been paying attention to rumors. I've just avoided it at all costs. So I have no idea.
Oh, I hear so many rumors. It's going to be a love fest of Omega and everybody, and Susan in the corner, and they'll have a drink. No, it's just crazy.
There's too much reveal going on, so I had to switch off.
Yeah, well,
So
yeah, because half of this.
Is that like Susan in the corner as in sort of girlfriend in a coma? It's the Smiths. Susan in the corner. No, it's serious. I mean, yeah. And again, why are we doing stuff like that? Because it is this thing where it's saying, "Oh, look, we're doing all these callbacks and stuff that I, as a fan who watched it, don't want to see." Do something new, Russell, and don't mess it up.
Now, Hugh.
Yeah, because he will mess up, because even if it is Omega, given what he did to Sutek, no doubt Omega will be taken down to the vets and castrated and put out of his misery or whatever it is, the resolution will be cherished and, memorable Doctor Who iconography is being taken and trashed by this iteration of Doctor Who. Why? I have no idea. He must think he's got the keys to the kingdom, so he thinks he can create new lore, new myth, whatever. But you know what he's doing? He's just trashing, ultimately, his own reputation as the man who made Doctor Who more publicly accessible than it ever had been throughout a lot of its time. That's what he's done. And at the same time, he's taken down Sutek with him. Hopefully not Omega, the Valiant, whoever the hell it is. Maybe it'll be them all. They'll all turn up in a Sharabang. And it'll be a big lovely
Carnival
day
of
out in
Monsters.
Blackpool.
Didn't we have a lovely day the day we went to Bangor, possibly?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they might do that early in the
that
Saturday
might
evening.
change the dialogue slightly. But if you think of the last two episodes, though, what's actually truly happened regarding Jeopardy? What's truly happened regarding a villain doing villainous things? Where's the monsters? The monster was Scooby-Doo last week. The monster this week just disappeared dead easy. If you really think of it, that just under half the series, 40% of this series, nothing's really happened. And therefore, when it comes to engagement, the scores are going to be interesting. Here we go. So, Paul Naught, John Naught, Hugh 3, Rachel 5, and myself 2. There you go.
Wow.
And I think people can start to guess what's going to happen here. We have been very careful from Space Babies onwards, judging carefully. And when you do have 5 people, it balances out. It always does. So 10 out of 50 engagement got. And that obviously was 20% of the final mark. So here we go. Are you ready? I might as well do a nice little build up here. Here we go. Do you know, there's more excitement in that than there is in the program. Here we go. Here we go. I know. You see, this is how you create tension. 43 out of 150 it got. 43. So that means it only got 28% of the possible mark. And therefore, when we do the comparisons, there you go. That's where it stands. Actually, I've got to take one more off because Hugh, it's true, isn't it? You were telling me during the day you were taking points off, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah. So I thought at the end of it, I like the prettiness of it, and I like some of the pacing. I know that other people didn't, but it just got worse and worse because the more you think about it, the worse it gets, unfortunately.
And so if anyone thinks I'm on the fiddle, I'm not. You did, didn't you? You sent me a later text and you took a mark off and I was just too late on that one. So that's why I said 43. 43 is the truth and I will change that. So basically 43, that we've made that the worst of this series so far in its entirety. And therefore, when you compare that to last year on 43, that puts it level with Rogue. And it puts it just above Space Baby. So isn't that fascinating? In the end, we've come to a very similar conclusion that Rogue killed Doctor Who. It wasn't Doctor Who. And we've done it again. I think that's fascinating, actually, because we're not talking to each other, Thread. We don't. I'm amazed by that. And I think it's right. It's just above...
Yeah.
We're all,
no, I was going to say, at most yesterday, we talked to each other, us two, didn't we? Just to clarify a couple of things before we went and did our respective reviews. I was clarifying something to make sure I wasn't going crazy. I needed an answer from the English teacher.
Well, Pete Merritt is saying you've all been far too generous. But in the scheme of things, Pete, you can see we've got it in the relegation zone of RTD2.
That's
Fred, were all of the ones last year out of 150?
1 or 2 sneaked through then. That's why I also do the audience share with the percentage now.
Yeah.
Some weeks people were, I don't know, ill or whatever. But yeah, it's so yeah, 43. So that was that was the week that you'll never get back. Do you know what, John? I just want some Doctor Who now. That's
Yeah.
all. That's all.
That's simple. That's what it is. You know what, Brendan? If the BBC are at all sensible, the next set of hands they put the keys to the kingdom into is that of a non Doctor Who fan, just someone that writes good or knows how to write good television drama that'll keep an audience entertained. That's all. Nobody that wants to mess with the lore, nobody that wants to put their paw print and have legacy with this. Just someone who wants to inform, educate, entertain, and get us all behind the sofa. It's not difficult. Give it a true professional. We might get Doctor Who back.
So in essence, what we've said there is basically we think it's as bad as Space Babies. Yeah. Even though it's got 1 million less viewers.
That's
yeah.
bad.
And it's as equally bad as Rogue. And so I think we're on the money. Now, Rachel, you've been streaming away. We'll be battling it out. More streaming coming.
Just to say, Brendan, I'm going to have to go.
Of course. Okay.
Right,
See you
Catch you
later.
later.
Bye.
See you for cocktails.
John up there will be on Thursday, won't you, with our Target special?
Yes, I've been doing my homework, going back years and years and years, and going deeper into my Eves. That I've been
There
for
you
a
go.
long
So
time.
basically,
Very creepy. In fact, you know, me having a look in the Eves is a lot creepier than Doctor Who is.
yeah, well, exactly. So everybody, you know, we have our Thursday think tank this week. It's going to be a Target special, and John's on as an example. Right, Rachel, your streams. What are you up to?
Okay, so I've got my review that went up yesterday, so feel free to check that one out. And then after this, I'm going in to just check the video that I've made to be released shortly. That's the ratings video. And then tomorrow I'm looking at the Metro article that was released.
Yes.
I find that very interesting. Very interesting. And then I don't know what to do for the rest of the week. So.
Yes, I think I've got a few ideas up my sleeve. I've got to do some weeding in the garden. I mean, you've got to do some work as well.
You could stream that if you want, Brendan.
Yes, well, yeah, I mean, there you go. I can do super chats from the garden.
Yeah.
I certainly need a photograph with the grass, don't I? That's definite. It looks so John's been in the garden as well, because you've got a bit of a tan about you, I think.
Yes, I've been in the garden. I've been in the park. I've been walking the dogs, getting there. But you know something, I could have done with 45 minutes longer in the garden yesterday. Was busy wasting my time doing something else. What could that have been?
Yes, I know. And it's not going to happen all the time. People are going to give up. Mad Mackham agreed Doctor Who needs to be kept away from fans, ditch the backstory, ditch the old monsters and villains, and keep the universe. And as I said in my manifesto on Wednesday night, we need to move forward.
Yes.
If you haven't watched that, it's well worth it. It's me. No. So basically, yeah, I've given my tuppenny worth. Now, indulge for too long. Thank you, everybody. That's 3 streams in 20 hours. I think the day is done. Thank you very much.
You're looking very tired.
Very, I
must
know.
say.
So is
Very
David.
tired. You're looking your
David
age.
Tennant. That didn't work, did it?
Oh no, that's
You're
also
looking your age.
that's one of the things I'm going to do this week. Thank you, Brendan.
Well, that's
Get that on Tuesday.
I'll be streaming that as well. Yes.
Brendan, thank you for all your efforts over the last 3 programs, including prep for tonight.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you as
Thanks,
always.
all.
No, it's all right.
And thank you, Paul and Rachel. And
Everyone have a good
Night.
night, and
Thank
thanks for
you.
joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.